Hi everyone, Kristin here. I love when we get to the history for the holidays time of the year, because it means I get to learn about things that happened in the past surrounding my favorite season. You all know that I often draw from newspapers, but this year I did something a little different. This time I am drawing from an academic journal. The journal in question is the American Journal of Nursing, more specifically Volume 24, which was published in December of 1924. I know you might be thinking, what could you possibly find in an academic journal from 1924 that would be exciting for the holidays now? Well, this volume contains a piece under the byline Edna L. Foley, RN and Department Editor, that covers how visiting nurses associations handled Christmas with their patients. It's a short article, only about 3 pages long, but it gives us some insight into how nurses in the 1920s made sure their patients had something to enjoy for Christmas. The article came about because the journal reached out to 8 visiting nurse associations to ask how they helped those who were unwell find joy at Christmas time. Today, I'm going to share with you some of what they found. One association noted that if the patient was a shut-in, that is, someone who doesn't leave the house, they would gift them a plant. If a child had cardiac issues, the nurses made sure that they were given a toy that was fun and gave them entertainment while they were required to remain in bed. The Chicago Visiting Nurse Association began its planning in November, creating lists of families that would benefit from receiving special dinners and toys for their children, with the journal noting that, quote, Christmas is the happiest season of the year for the patients and both the happiest and busiest for the nurses. I would bet that much hasn't changed in the modern day. In one location, it took a full year to plan 2 parties for children. They would attend the events held in park field houses and find presents wrapped and labeled with their names under a large tree. There would be ice cream and cake provided too, which would for sure have made the children very happy. In addition to these little anecdotes, there are more detailed ones provided as well. For example, apparently in 1923, a, quote, tiny little woman, so tied up by arthritis deformans that only the constant devotion of her husband keeps her alive, received the gift of her dreams, a blue silk dress with a high neck and long sleeves. The dress, we are told, was found by one of the directors, who went to multiple stores to find the appropriate garment in the correct size. Once the dress was purchased, quote, it was taken to the patient with a holly wreath and a couple of pink roses, and after contemplating it joyfully, she announced that it was pretty enough to be buried in and that she would keep it for that purpose. Don't worry though, dear listeners, because those around her convinced her not to save the dress for when she died, and she began to wear it for festivals and Sundays. Another fond memory that is shared of, quote, long ago Christmases had to do with the Children's Hospital in Boston. There, the wards would be festively decorated, and there was, quote, the triumphal procession led by the cook and a brandy-burning pudding around the gift-decked table. The gifts included dolls and, quote, pillowcases stuffed with teddy bears of the finest quality. Exactly how it should be, if you ask me. There was also special treatment for those registered with the tuberculosis clinic. One such example, which I will give you fully in the words of the article, was that, quote, on Christmas Eve, some jolly volunteers, including a young physician from Holland who had come over to study American methods of combating tuberculosis, trimmed a tree in a home where there were 4 children, all registered at the tuberculosis clinic. And the longshoreman tuberculosis father and the little worried cardiac mother did their best to conceal their own childlike joy in the tree by describing Christmas as they both remembered it in their Newfoundland home. Finally, lest you think the wonderful nurses who do all of this good work be neglected, we are assured they were not. We are told that for the nurses, books were the gift most often received. Some of the titles that were given to the nurses include Cabot's Social Service and the Art of Healing, and What Men Live By, Gardner's History of Public Health Nursing, Adams's 20 Years at Hull House, and Wald's House on Henry Street. I have not personally read any of these, and even though I love books, it doesn't seem as exciting as a fancy new dress that you always dreamed of, but I am certainly not one to say no to a gift, especially when that gift is a book. Whatever the nurses felt when they received their books, I hope they at least did feel appreciated, just as I hope their patients truly felt the warm and fuzzy feelings that reading this article made me feel, whether you celebrate anything or nothing this December. I wish you the happiest end of the year possible.
Yo, Saturnalia. You're probably familiar with this phrase, whether from middle school history or elementary Latin classes, or both. Saturnalia is one of ancient Rome's most famous holidays, and one of its most misunderstood. It was celebrated in mid-December, in the days leading up to the winter solstice. Like a similar festival in ancient Greece, it was linked to the winter planting season, and thus to the god who oversaw the harvest. In the Roman pantheon, Saturn. It was not only a celebration of future harvest, but also a time in the darkest days of winter for suspending work, business, and traditional social rules. Even the statue of Saturn himself, in his temple on the Forum, was unbound so that he could, at least symbolically, join the fun. Clearly, a good time was had by all. From the 17th to the 20th or 21st, or eventually even 23rd of December, extended party times, this is what Saturnalia was. And then there's what Saturnalia wasn't, which is where the misconceptions come in. Even the Encyclopedia Britannica will say that the influence of the Saturnalia upon the celebrations of Christmas and the New Year has been direct, even though conspicuously that's not when Christmas is, and Roman New Year celebrations on the calends of January had very different customs. The Roman holiday that is connected to Christmas, interestingly, is the Dies Solis Invictus Nati, to which you may be saying, the what? The Dies Solis Invictus Nati, or in English, the day on which the unconquered sun was born. This holiday was, in fact, on December 25th. And what I find most interesting about this is that scholars don't agree about which holiday, the Dies Solis Invictus Nati, or Christmas, came first. In the late Roman Empire, obviously, Christianity and the worship of the sun god coexisted, but the origins of both holidays are somewhat unclear. Christmas was not one of the earliest Christian holidays. Early Christian authors argued that only sinners, not saints, celebrated their birthdays, and that the idea of gods having birthdays was silly. Once it did start being celebrated, it took a while for consensus on a date for its observance to come together. The earliest link of Christmas with December 25th is found in a Roman calendar made in 354, which says, Christ was born in Bethlehem of Judea on the 8th day before the calends of January. And the leading historian of the sun in Roman art and religion, an extremely cool topic, argues that creating a special sun holiday on December 25th was the idea of the Emperor Julian, reacting to the December observance of Christmas rather than the other way around. What's very clear is that by the late 4th century, people within the Roman Empire were disagreeing about it. A Roman Christian treatise of that era argues that while some people called the date only the birthday of the invincible or the birthday of the sun, no one is more invincible than Christ, who was invincible even by death, and who is also the Son of Justice, thus proving that Latin wordplay is really irresistible. The influential bishop Augustine of Hippo, with slightly less wordplay, also noted in a Christmas sermon that December 25th was celebrated for both reasons. So, in conclusion, Saturnalia and Christmas were definitely different things in the late Roman Empire, though both holidays, along with the Dies Solis Invictus Nati, were obviously a good reason to celebrate when everything is cold and dark and terrible. Whatever you are celebrating, gentle listeners, may you have winter holidays filled with warmth and light.
Hello, Footnoting History friends. It's Kristin here with a little bit about the history of Hanukkah and some of the laws surrounding Jewish practice from the 14th century through today. If you've listened to our previous episodes for History for the Holidays, you may remember me talking about Moses Maimonides' rules for lighting the Hanukkah lamps. But of course, Maimonides wasn't the only one writing on Jewish laws and Hanukkah traditions, and lamps and candles aren't the only traditions Jewish communities have. Joseph Caro was a prominent Sephardic rabbi writing in 16th century Spain, and many Orthodox Jewish communities consider him to be something of a gold standard for Jewish law, or halakha. People often refer to him as the author or our master. He's that important. Caro was born in 1488 in Toledo, Spain, but he and his family were part of the big expulsion of Jews in 1492 brought to you by King Ferdinand and Isabella. He and his family first went to Portugal, then to Morocco, then to places in the Ottoman Empire until he finally settled in Safed in modern-day Israel in 1536. He was also very into Jewish mysticism, and Safed was the center for that at that time. Caro is particularly respected because he preserved a lot of Jewish traditions from Spain after that expulsion when so much else was lost. Mostly he's famous for writing a work called Shulchan Aruch, which translates to set table. And it's kind of a metaphor, but it's also kind of what the work is. Jewish law can be very confusing. There are a lot of disagreements, and this was supposed to be a handy reference. It was very useful to people. However, it did not eliminate disagreements between Jewish people over interpretations of laws. That's probably never going to happen, but it was an incredibly popular work that was read and copied and reprinted a lot. So much so that Moses Isserles would write glosses on the work and also add in Ashkenazic traditions to the text. Moses Isserles was born in Krakow, Poland around 1530 and was also a very prominent Jewish writer and rabbi for European Jews at that time. You sometimes hear him go by the nickname Rama or Rema, which stands for the first letters of Rabbi Moshe Isserles. Sometimes his name is spelled with an A instead of an I. And Rama can mean lofty or height in Hebrew, so it has a double meaning for Isserles. Isserles wrote a lot of other stuff too, but for our purposes today, he worked on Joseph Caro's set table, and he called his editions Hamapa, or the tablecloth, because it was supposed to be complementary to Caro's table, not be replacing it. The tablecloth was also extraordinarily popular, and from 1578 on, basically, all of Caro's set tables also had the tablecloth. It's a pretty big work that is measured in volumes, 4 if you don't also have other commentaries attached to it, but there are often other commentaries attached to it. It was a little too much and too out of reach for many people. Enter Solomon Gansfried, a 19th century prodigy in Jewish law, who was born orphaned in Ungar, Hungary in 1804. He saw that most people just couldn't tackle the table and the tablecloth, so he made a condensed version that was written in a vernacular style Hebrew and was meant to be accessible by the general Jewish population in 1864, which he called Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, or the abbreviated set table. And it covers a lot of laws and traditions for daily life, holidays, life rituals, but he definitely covers Hanukkah, and the work remains incredibly popular today. The abbreviated table has a lot to say on how and where and when to light the Hanukkah lamps, but since we talked about Maimonides and the Hanukkah lamps previously, I'm going to tell you some of the other ones. So first, according to Caro, Isserles, and Gansfried, you must recite the story of the miracles of Hanukkah to your household. You gotta tell the story about Judah Maccabee and how the candles in the temple that was reclaimed after a war with the Greeks burned for 8 nights when they only had enough oil for one, and they were able to rededicate the temple. Also, you should generously give charity or tzedakah, because these days are about improving your character, and you can really improve yourself by giving to the poor, and really, really improve yourself by giving to the poor so that the poor can study Torah. You are not allowed to fast on Hanukkah, which is good because there are a lot of delicious things to eat. You can fast the day before if you want, good sense maybe, to prep for all that fried food. And you can fast after the end of the holiday, which is maybe necessary after eating all that fried food. You can work during the holiday or the days that don't fall on Shabbat, except for women. And this is my favorite rule and my favorite explanation. Women are not supposed to work, quote, the entire time the lights are burning. And this is the reason. It's because there was a, quote, harsh decree affecting the daughters of Israel during the Maccabean period. What follows is an elaboration/retelling of the Judith story that got changed a bit to fit into the Hanukkah narrative. In the original, Judith is a widow, and the story takes place centuries before the Hanukkah events. This version is a little different and is originally found in the 14th century writings of Rabbi Nissim, who was from Girona, Spain, before it was picked up by Joseph Caro for the set table and so on. So the abridged set table says that any virgin to be married was required to have sex with the monarch, who must have been a super busy guy. But one day, a very beautiful woman who was the daughter of the high priest Yohanan, we don't get her actual name here, but is Judith, was summoned to the king, and she agreed to go along with this custom. Then, and this is pretty good, She fed him a lot of cheese until the king became very thirsty, and then he drank a lot of wine, got really drunk, and passed out. At which point, this beautiful daughter of Yohanan cut off the king's head and brought it to Jerusalem. I guess it was easy to get out of the palace with a severed head. Just walk like you know where you're going, and no one will stop you. When the king's general saw what happened, he and his army fled. Over the years, the story got further details about how the woman was related to the Maccabees and the foods the woman fed the king. And in one, it's cheese cooked into a pancake, basically a cheese latke, which sounds pretty awesome. Certainly, this custom was still popular by the abridged table's time, but already by the 14th century in Europe, there was a strong tradition of eating cheese during Hanukkah because of this association with Judith, not Judith. And the cheese people were probably eating in medieval Europe was from a goat or a sheep and not a cow because that was what they had access to. When Eastern European Jewish immigrants came to America, the latke turned more to a potato treat, but Hanukkah still had and has dairy-based meals. So this year, enjoy those blintzes, the kugels, and the donuts stuffed with sweet cheese. Sour cream has always been the superior choice for latke toppings, but this is just one more reason why. Although, if someone at the party keeps insisting you eat more cheese and have more wine, maybe it's time to go. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Thank you from the entire Footnoting History team for being with us for another wonderful year, and we hope that no matter what you celebrate, the next year has wonderful things in store for you. Happy holidays, everyone.